Howdy, y'all. Let's wait for people to join the stream. And let's see, let me go over to YouTube now and set all this up.
Caleb Brown in the house. What's up, Caleb?
Wow, we got 7 already? Jesus. You guys are quick.
I'll tweet out this link. You've got the wrong promo code for Paloma Verde in the bio.
Really? I heard this is the only one that works. The other one makes your dick fall off. I was sure that Carlos told me that the other one like sends poison CBD to you. It's not even CBD. It's like distilled Hillary Clinton urine.
Can we get to like the serious part of the conversation already?
Oh, yeah. Which one's that?
Narrator's voice. This is the serious part of the conversation.
But yeah. And okay, here is. So yeah, and but Pete, congratulations on your big appearance on Tim Pool.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I wish I would have gotten to say more, but I think that's a common refrain from most people who go on the show. It's Tim's show, and he's going to talk as much as he wants, and hey, more power to him. If I had a show in a similar to format to his, I'd probably do most of the talking as well. So
yeah,
people were complaining about that, and I'm like, it's his show, you know that, right? It's like we're having a conversation, and then all of a sudden he goes, okay, we're going to go live now, and we just basically continue the conversation. So
yeah. But I thought the point you made about China was just so excellent, and like I saw all the reading in the chat when you started talking about why China is not really a threat to us, and that's something I really wish more people knew, because
here's the thing. The crazy thing about that is, it's like, I mean, if you have somebody who's left wing who goes on there and then they start saying that China is not a big threat, obviously you're going to look at that person and go, really, what do you know, and everything. I was the most right wing person in that fucking room.
Yeah.
By a lot.
And I'm the one saying that I'm the one coming in there and going, here's the facts about China. There's this. House of cards. I mean, it's going to fall, and they're going to go right back to a cultural revolution, and they're going to start oppressing their people even worse than they do now. And what do we want to do about it? I mean, I don't care. It's like, oh, what if China takes over Taiwan? I don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
I just don't. It has nothing to do with my life. I don't care. There are Christians being massacred because they're Christians in Africa right now. There are Christians massacring Muslims because there are Muslims in Africa right now. I don't care. I mean, I care, but it's not like I want to go do anything.
Right. It's not like you've got so many other problems to solve.
Yeah. I mean, they just put down mandates. Hey, there we go.
Speaking of mandates.
Yeah, that's what we got coming here. But Pete, I mean, it's so absolutely correct, because like everything about China, if people just heard the data about how bad things are going to get, this is why Xi Jinping is going all totalitarian right now, is that this is he's preparing for real lockdown,
what are they doing?
Lockdown.
What are they doing? They're taking femboys off of TV. They're persecuting rich TV stars. This is the start of a cultural revolution. This has nothing to do with us.
And they've been like forecasting this for like 2 decades with what they've been doing with the Falun Gong and to the Uyghurs, in Xinjiang, and like the amount of stuff they've been doing to get ready for this, and all the technical preparation. Like right now, they spend like twice the amount on internal security that they do on their military budget, and that tells you what they think their priorities are, because you can always tell what the power is, who has the power and who, where they need it by where the money's actually going. You can always follow the money to find the power, and if they're spending twice as much on internal security as they are on, military, it tells you they're really not thinking too much about external issues. And you can also see that like what they're doing with the Belt and Road Initiative, where they're basically preparing for a world where they can't navigate the seas because all of their neighbors hate them and want to take their stuff. And there's very little that they can do about it. They do not have the naval capacity to, secure their supply lines from the Persian Gulf all the way, convenient 6,000 miles away to China.
Oh, one of the things that Scott and I talked about last night that I had forgot to mention on the show is most of their neighbors hate them. I mean, 2014 to 2015, there were firefights between the Chinese army and Vietnam and the Vietnamese. I mean, these people do not like them at all. I mean,
that's been going on for 3,000 years.
yeah. But I mean, this is just recent. People were like, "Oh, they've been a capitalist nation." It's like, no, and I thought Scott made a great point about the whole Belt and Road thing, where they're going to build a road all the way to Lisbon.
Yeah.
So what are they just going to be like overthrowing countries as they go? Or are they going to have to, if they did come up with this insane project that they can't afford and that people are going to stop taking their currency soon as it is?
Oh, no one takes their currency already. They all have to do everything they do has to be in dollars.
So what are they going to do? They'll become the biggest diplomats on the planet. I mean, they'll have to be friendly to everybody as they're going through, or else they'll just be torn apart. And everybody who thinks that like their military is absolutely, their military is awful. I don't care that they have all these people. And I mean, it's also, do you think
they don't even have all the people?
Yeah. I mean, you think most of the people in that military want to be in the military? No, they're just there.
Well, no, it's even worse than that, because if the way they stack their numbers a little bit is they include all of the ROTC recruits who are only there. Because if you go to college in China, you have to go, enter into their ROTC. And really all you do there is, like, my wife, who's like a size 3 or something like that, she like really like tiny. And she, like, when she went to college in Beijing, she had to go through military training, which is just you learn a little bit of communist propaganda, and everyone understands this bullshit. And then you just like sing some songs to Mao or something like that, and that's all it is. And it's a total joke. And they inflate the numbers with like hundreds of thousands of people who only in the military for like 4 years, because that's the 4 years of college, and then they leave. And they just do that every single year to inflate their numbers. So really, it's like, I kind of just laugh at the idea that, like a size 4, like my wife, is going to be, carrying a gun and, shooting against the US military. It was like the who's who of like all the worst killers on the planet. And it's like, this is not an army. And by the way, and the last time their military was actually deployed, in any sort of combat situation, and by the way, I'm being really, really generous with that, was 1989 to Tiananmen Square, where they just shot a whole bunch of unarmed protesters. And that's like the sum total of their institutional capabilities. They can manage a few unarmed protesters, or a few tens of thousands, but but that's it. I mean, you want to put those guys up against even the Taiwanese. Yeah, they can't take the Taiwanese. And just because they have to put all of that on a ship and then move it over, and the Taiwanese are going to be, throwing harpoons at anything that moves in the water. And then Japan has basically said, hey, if you attack Taiwan, we're going to come with our aircraft carriers and fuck you up. And they can just park their aircraft carriers right behind Taiwan and run sorties all up and down the Strait of Taiwan. So there's nothing they can do.
You don't even need a military to oppress your own people. The police can do that. Yeah, your own unarmed population. I mean, it's madness what people have bought into, and I want to know Steve Bannon's business interests in China, because most of the people who are China hawks are getting their information from Steve Bannon. And I want to know about him living on a yacht with a Chinese billionaire. I want to know about all the business interests he has in China before I'm going to listen to anything that guy has to say.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, who stands to benefit from the appearance that China is a major player, is an ascendant empire? Who stands to benefit from that? I see where the current Western regime really, as they continue to burn through their political capital, that they've accumulated, they need a boogeyman. They need someone out there to create cover for the whole implementation of the Great Reset and all that kind of thing. So to me, it stands to reason that they would pump China up as a boogeyman, even if they aren't.
Yeah, what they wanted to do was kind of what they were doing with TPP before Trump, put a fork in it. Was, they understood that, okay, China's about to collapse, so we're going to move all of our investments to Vietnam and the South Pacific, those islands, because they still have stable demographies and they can manage they can get the same work done for cheaper. And so they were going to use the TPP as a way of fucking over China in order to move just that industrial base out of China to the South Pacific. And they were going to benefit that way, but Trump kind of put a fork in that and said, nah, we're not doing it. And also tariffs against China, because fuck them. And Trump ended up doing the same thing with Mexico. So basically, when they passed the USMCA, they took entire portions of the TPP verbatim and just changed the name from Mexico, from all the Southern Pacific Islands to Mexico. And so basically now Mexico's the new China. And and it's even better because they're 5 times cheaper than China, and in terms of their labor, they can do more higher value added than China, and and they're right next door, so you don't need massive international shipping, which is very, very expensive. Yeah, even though floating it is 1/12 the cost of driving it anywhere, which by the way is the real problem with the Belt and Road Initiative, is that now that's 12 times more expensive than shipping it over water. But anyway, but now Mexico is basically the new low cost labor of China. That's where all that industrial base is going to be shipping over to, and it's just a matter of getting done.
Speaking of Mexico, Mark Claire had a really interesting tweet. I think he put it out this morning or yesterday.
Funny because that's who I'm texting with right now.
He said that. It was a poll with 3 options, and it said which country or which people are experiencing the most liberty right now, and it was Canada, the United States, and Mexico. And Mexico is 98% on the poll.
I believe it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And and so in terms
you
of
can walk into a drugstore and get hydroxychloroquine without a prescription. You can get ivermectin without a prescription. I'm not saying that any of those things will treat anything, just so this doesn't get taken down. Yeah. But yeah, you can get those things. You can walk in and get pretty much anything. I mean, it's nice. Trying to plan a trip to Mexico actually in December should be fun.
Oh, that would be a lot of fun. I would love to go to Mexico. It's nice being down here on the close to the border, where if anything goes horribly wrong, I have an escape route right there already planned out. And so it's I don't think we're going to be just going to quite get there, but on the off chance, it's that's my way out. But I think we're about ready to get started. And first I wanted to say, oh shoot, I must have. Unfortunately, I ate all of the those CBD gummies that are delicious from Paloma Verde CBD. And if you use a really excellent promo code, and Matt, what was it again? No, that was the wrong
code
one.
King.
That was the wrong one. That one I guarantee will give you distilled Hillary Clinton urine. It's Carlos assured me that was the wrong one.
All of my poor listeners.
But but if you use a promo code named Popular, you will get 25% off your order, and you over $75 and free shipping. And these gummies are the best. I really liked using them to whenever my wife gets upset at me, I hold her down and shove these things down her throat, and she calms right down. I'm kidding. No, but seriously, they're great.
I mean, I know Asians are supposed to be submissive, but come on.
No, she got home from the gym earlier, and she's like, "Oh, Andrew, my muscles are really hurting." I'm like, "Here, baby, here's the go ahead, take the last 2," because I'm generous to her like that, and that's how that really works out, because she's actually pretty strong for such a small girl. And by small, I mean she's like 5'7", so she's actually taller than the average male in China, and that was a big problem for her. But anyway, yeah, like they're all short over there. Who knew? I guess 20 years of major famine or something like that, makes you grow really short because that lowers your metabolism. Oops. And anyway, but so anyway, and there's also a new thing which we have now, which is we all have a Patreon, a Subscribe Stars. And Matt finally got his first no, I'm kidding, his supporting listeners group up and running after all this time of promoting it behind the scenes. Matt, why don't you go ahead and give him the link?
Subscribestar.com/kingpilled.
And how much does it cost? What do they get for it?
There's 3 different levels. There's for $10 you get access to the supporting listeners group, $10 a month. For $20 a month, you get access to the supporting listeners group and access to private live streams with future guests, as well as the sexual pleasure of being so based. And then for $50 a month, you can get all of the above, as well as a private Zoom call with Steven and I, and guests to be determined each month. So those are the 3 tiers.
And Pete, you have a Subscribe Star too. I don't know if there are any rewards.
If you go to Subscribe Star, it's Pete Quinones. Just look for Free Man Beyond the Wall. It'll pop up. And yeah, there's different levels there, and everything from, hey, you get early episodes to, hey, you get my phone number.
Works out great. And I made a one as well. And if you for $2 you can get just my articles. I have a second one up I just posted last night, which is the introduction to archotropism. And the first one was the introduction to the anti-tax, and they're both fairly long, good 5 pages each. And I will be posting them pretty quickly. And so you will get those a month ahead of time. So if you want to read the articles a month ahead of time, you might consider a $2 right there. If you want to join my supporting listeners group, that's it's going to cost you a little bit more, $8. So cancel the gas digital. Excuse me, but and put that money over here, which was really useful. And if you go up to 17, I will give you a block list that I've taken through commie Twitter. And so you can physically remove all of the leftists from your news feed. They will not be able to find your account. They will find, like, why am I blocked by this person I've never seen before? And this will be why. So and that is updated regularly. So, and now we all have extra money coming in, and you can help all of us fight a war on poverty and stop being poor.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I don't want to have to continue my job at the biodiesel plant feeding poor people into. Excuse me.
To run the city buses.
Yep, to run the city buses. Anyway, so we have some major news today out of Washington D.C. and we have Biden came out with his, or I should say, the empire has struck back at the what was left of the free world, and we've already seen what's been going on in Australia, and I'm afraid that's probably going to come here too. So Biden has directed OSHA to force all firms employing at least 100 people to get their entire staff fully vaccinated. And this is on top of his pre-existing orders for all federal workers, all military personnel, and federal contractors. And it basically, this order, goes after 2/3 of Americans. Now that, this is not the worst part of it, because, the largest chunk of the people who have not yet been vaccinated are kids. And so, making a order that applies to, only, employers with more than 100 employees, well, those employees are not, tend not to be children in school. And that's where this is going right now. And this is where, this is like we can stop them from getting the kids right now. This is basically where, this is the point where, okay, we need to start fighting back. So go ahead, Pete.
I didn't have anything to say yet.
we're having this roundtable here to start really talking about why we need to have libertarians, in the city councils and in the mayor's offices to, start putting the kibosh on enforcement. Because, this is something we've talked about in our last, Matt, Pete, and Poppy roundtable, was that the the government does not have the budget to really enforce all of this, and it's mainly going to be enforced like through the honor system. They claim all these nice big threats, and they just assume people are going to follow the law because that's usually how it works. But they, OSHA only has like a budget of like $500 million, not much, and there's like 2,000 agents, and most of them are not in the field. And if you're looking at that, and by the way, there's 20,000 municipalities in the United States. So, there's like, one agent for roughly every 10, municipalities. So we outnumber the bastards pretty heavily. And I'm thinking, okay, we're also a lot more dispersed than them. So their enforcement measures are basically non-existent. And they can, I'm sure there'll be a few of them that, they make examples of, but they don't have the budget to really make a whole bunch of examples out of people. And there's just so many businesses and so many municipalities everywhere. And I really see this as a way of, really pushing back and fighting back on them, because, and just embarrass them, because if they can't enforce their own laws, this makes them look weak. And I think that, and it makes us look a lot stronger. And I think this is like the way, in terms of actually spreading a message of liberty. Actually, let's try spreading the results of liberty, the results of electing, libertarians to say fuck no, and or Praxians, please. But if we are using this as a way of keeping people safe, I think that again, safety always trumps liberty, and they might get liberty too from this. I think this is the way forward for the liberty movement. How we actually go about gaining power is that the federal government is basically enforcing tyranny, which is chaos. That's not order. That's chaos. And this is, if we're going to be the ones turning archotropism to our advantage, well, let's re-extract order and gain the power with that.
Yeah, I think at this point it's only local. I mean, I know Jason would disagree with me. I've heard you guys live stream today, and Jason's like totally against local politics at this point. But I think that, those of us who are in a position where we have, we've made it so that we can work remotely from anywhere. I mean, I can work from anywhere in the world right now, that we can start concentrating on other things. Is we're the ones who want to start concentrating on like local politics, while everybody else is building up their wealth and becoming mobile, and really trying to get out of the system as much as possible and work out of the system as much as possible. But I think it's time that we can probably, some of us who get away with that can do that, can start looking at local politics, and if not getting involved ourselves, being lobbyists, figuring out who we want to be in there, and get that person in there and push and start shaping things. I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility, especially when you just consider that. I mean, the federal government has all these agencies that are going to have to enforce this. They just don't have the budget to do it on a mass scale. They don't have the budget to enforce it in, like, most agencies don't have the budget to go and do their job. Say like the mandate thing, say they did it with the DOJ. The DOJ doesn't have the budget to enforce like a quarter of the businesses in New York City in a year. So it's like, what are they going to do, really? They're going to rely on states to do it. And there's a lot of governors who are coming out and saying, we're not going to do this, even blue governors. And there's cities that are like, no, we're not going to put up with this. I mean, I know people tell me all the time, myself or no one I know has worn a mask since this whole thing started. And well, that's because they're in areas that are just like, screw you, we're not doing this. This is stupid. So what does it come down to again? Get the hell out of cities.
Yes.
Get the hell out of cities. What are you still doing there? Come on.
I think the biggest thing that this does is, and this is really the purpose of it, is it provides a legal fig leaf for the companies, all the companies that wanted to do this anyways. There's the majority of people are just fine with a mandate like this, and they want a mandate like this. People that run these companies want mandates like this. They just need to have the legal cover to be able to enforce to actually implement that sort of policy, and that's what this does. So it's going to come down to cultural differences. You're going to have to be in a cultural region where the people don't want to enforce it, because ultimately, really legally, it's probably not going to be entirely enforceable if you run it all the way out through the whole legal rigmarole. But nobody can do that. Nobody can afford to do that. It's much easier. People are just like, water flows to the lowest point. People are just going to naturally, the blue cities are going to be the worst. Blue rural areas are going to be probably just about as bad. And just basically, the further away you get from blue cities, the less this sort of thing is going to be enforced, and the less rigorously it's going to be pursued and chased down. So again, it just comes back to cultural differences. And for this is for people who are employed, and it's going to go to beyond people that, right now it's the 100 employees or more. It's definitely going to move beyond that point. But this is for people who are employed. If you are not employed, if you employ yourself, if you've gotten yourself to the position where you don't have to worry about this kind of thing, then you don't have to worry about this kind of thing. You have to worry about other things. Like for me personally, I'm concerned about hospitals, because I have an 11-month-old son, and I don't want to deal with him suddenly, knock on wood, he gets hurt and we have to take him to the hospital, and they're like, oh, he needs to be vaccinated for us to treat him. Because I guarantee that's what's going to happen. I guarantee that's going to be the case at some point soon. And it may even be now. I would not be surprised if they would vaccinate people, kids behind their parents' backs. They would just do it without even getting consent. So that's the sort of thing that I'm concerned about. I don't have to worry about getting fired. My income is like you, Pete. Our income is just completely mobile, and we can work from home, and we don't have to worry about this sort of thing. The thing I'm concerned about is hospitals. That's the biggest thing. And I think that's going to drive us to the reddest region that we can find, in hopes that, the fact that the federal government is so embedded into the medical system as it is, means probably that even in really red regions, the hospitals are still going to probably be kind of holdouts for this kind of thing. But at the very least, it'll be better than frickin' Southern California, where I am now.
What they are, well, it's funny you mentioned that, because they actually, Biden included that in his executive order, was the basically because he applied it to, and as also any company at all who receives federal funding, and and basically through Medicare or Medicaid, which is insurance companies, and they all receive that sort of money. And the way they're spinning it now, and this is is that because now that there's a vaccine, I should back up that last year it was decided that because COVID is not a preventable disease, then basically the insurance companies have to cover it, because there's no prevention for it. And unfortunately, now that they are saying that, well, the vaccines are safe and effective, and that's not really true. And now they're saying, okay, well, now that it is, a preventable disease, if you go to the hospital and you're not vaccinated, we're not covering you. So that's what they're going to say for why they can't treat you, is if you can't pay, or maybe then maybe they treat you and then they stick you with like a bankruptcy bill. And that's the way they're going to start pushing this right now. And again, at this point, we're basically in like fully fascist territory. I don't know how we can still make a private company distinction now, that they're using the private companies in order to enforce their will. And the private companies are more than happy to do this, because again, this is in the insurance company's incentive, that of course they don't want to pay out. They want to take money in and not pay it out. And that's what an insurance company is supposed to do. And that's their incentive. It's not that they want to keep happy customers. It's like, no, this thing's a fucking cabal. And this is fascism. And they're not private companies. We can maybe not, they're like private in name only, but again, that's something fascism is trying to do, where it's like, yeah, it's private in name only, and the government controls everything up and down about how it's done. And so it's like, in what sense is that actually private?
It's funny if you look at the New Deal, like that era, and you look at the mutual admiration society that there was between FDR and all of his advisors and Mussolini and Hitler. They all were of a mind. They were all like, we're all on the same page. We're all trying to recreate our societies in the same manner, in the same fashion, same, like a lot of the institutions that they created were identical across all three countries. And so, I mean, we've been the default American position is fascism, and has been for this entire regime since FDR. That's just been the default state. Ultimately, the public-private distinction is just useless. So I've been harping on this for months now, that libertarians that are talking about, oh, it's a private company or public or all this thing, they're trying to distinguish between the government and corporations and it's useless. It's completely useless, because liberty is not something related to the state.
Mm-hmm.
Liberty is something related to anybody. If you have property rights, you have those property rights, and you have the right to defend them against anybody, public or private. It doesn't, if you're a private actor violating my property rights, it doesn't matter if you're not a government. Liberty can't be something restricted just to the state. What there is there's good people and there's evil people. And right now there's evil people in positions of power who will use whatever institution they can, and they'll use whatever justification. Hypocrisy is a feature, not a bug. They're going to use whatever tool that they can use. And if you don't identify them as evil people and use whatever tool you can to oppose them and crush them, then they will crush you.
Oh, that's exactly right. I mean, progressivism is just fascism driving the speed limit. And yeah, thanks again, Malice. He's always got the best ideas, but doesn't always apply them, to their fullest extent. And
I saw a tweet the other day, and Matt's talked about the term liberty before and just how much of a trap it is. And it was just this long tweet thread about getting the vaccine and the mandates, and everyone has to get vaccinated. And then it ended with, and this is how we get to liberty. Yep. Well, I mean, what does that word mean anymore? It's like the word libertarian. So many words are just disappearing, and people are fighting it. I mean, words disappear from the lexicon. People, words change meanings all the time. I mean, why are you fighting it? Just let it go. Find something else.
They changed the definition of vaccine, a few weeks ago too.
They've changed it 3 times, I think, in the last 20 years.
Yeah. And they're not, I mean, it's like, if there's a word that can be used against them, they're just going to change the definition of it, so you can't talk about that anymore. And this is this is why I had to create a new word, archotropism, because this is a much harder one for them to turn. And with liberty though, it's like we don't, it's like you were so far removed from it now. And it's like, I mean, if you can't make this if you are still pretending that there is no distinction between like right and left, it's like, I mean, I can tell that there's a difference between Biden and Trump. I do it every time I go to the gas station, and I mean, this is night and day different. It's like, of course there's a preference here. It's not just a preference of authority versus liberty. It's also a preference of chaos versus order. It's like you have to accept reality that people have these preferences, and they exist for reasons, because obviously this is not all equal. And this is something I think Matt has talked about a lot with liberalism, is that it's based on this fundamental lie of equality. And I think this is I think libertarians are making a big mistake when they say that there's no distinction, because what you're saying is that they're equal, and they're not equal. And that right there is a lie. That is not true. And if you're basing your ideology or even your strategies on something that is not true, you're going to fail, or you're going to make yourself vulnerable.
Well, I will tell you this, from being from doing Timcast the other day and being on there with a guy named Sean Parnell, who's running for Senate out of Pennsylvania. If if Judith Miller, I had so much in common with him. We talked about so many things. I got his wife's a libertarian, he's conservatarian. But if like Judith Miller was there, I have nothing in common with that woman. I mean, what am I going to talk to her about? So where, I don't know where this, oh, we're neither right nor left. I mean, that's just leftism infiltrating libertarianism. That's just leftism coming in and saying, oh, everything's the same. There has to be equality. There has to be equality.
When you make things equal like that, when you say we're neither left nor right, they're all the same, what you're doing is you're removing a border. And I've said this before, that leftism is fundamentally about eliminating borders. It's about dissolving borders and removing distinctions. So that, I mean, they do it to words. They remove the borders. A word is a border around a concept. And as you make that concept, as you flex the meaning of the concept, as you flex the definition of that word, you're moving that border. You're watering and breaking that border down. Ultimately, structures and hierarchies require borders. You have to have borders around things, borders around objects. And that's fundamentally the right-wing ethos, which is we have to create order, which means we have to define things. We have to separate and distinguish, and fundamentally distinguish between good and evil. So when you say that they're both the same, there's no difference between them. This isn't just that, oh, this is a bad strategy and it doesn't work well. It's that you're fundamentally, you're muddying the water. You're promoting falsehood, and you're actively deceiving and creating a deceptive environment where people can't accurately evaluate the world around them. And that's fundamentally evil, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, if you're anytime, okay, I mean, let's give them a little bit of credit. They're not intending to be deceptive, but I think they're deceiving themselves.
Yeah.
And they're buying into something that is fundamentally untrue. And and it does matter that, okay, liberty versus authority, but that is a very important one. Again, that's why people usually put it on like a 4-quadrant thing instead of just a one spectrum thing. But these distinctions matter because all things are not equal, and good and evil are not equal, and there's more than one way to be, evil. Let's face it. This is what we're seeing the proof of this, in real time, where you're being forced by people who really don't have a right to force you to, take this gene therapy, to take it for your kids who have zero threat. This thing is no threat to children. And that is by far the largest portion of people who are still unvaccinated. There's such people in the workforce who have not been vaccinated yet. That's very, very few. And usually they're kind of like you guys, where, they're, technically employed, but they're not in one of these major employers. So, and you're kind of working from home by yourself and you don't have any employees. So it's like, you're no threat to anybody. And, but now we're having to, and they're not even like, they do lie a little bit and say, oh, we're doing this for the safety of the kids. And everybody just kind of knows that's bullshit. This thing does not threaten children at all. And but they're openly saying, we're doing it to protect the teachers. Like, we're going to force your children to get a gene therapy to protect the already vaccinated teachers. My God. It's like, this is the opportunity of a lifetime that libertarians have been waiting for. If you really want to spread the message, do it by, it's like, I'm here to keep your kids safe. It's like, what more liberty could they want at this point? Because basically everything else has been taken from them at this point. And you are going to be there saying, I'm going to use whatever local powers of government I have to demonstrate the power of liberty to you by keeping your kids safe. I'm going to demonstrate my power by, pushing back this supposedly almighty federal government, which, as we've already established, is not all powerful at all. Again, the OSHA budget is like $500 million. That's it. There's 2,000 agents, and most of them do not work in the field. And there's 20,000 municipalities, give or take a few hundred, in the United States. It's like there's one agent for every 10 towns, we outnumber the bastards really, really badly. And, this should be very, very simple to say, we're not going to cute laws. We're not enforcing it, and we're going to prosecute anyone who does. Any agent who comes in our jurisdiction, to enforce these laws is going to get arrested and thrown in a cage, or they get Waco'd and we dump the body in a ditch somewhere. Maybe don't say the last part.
Need compost for next year. So
the one word that I want to rehabilitate is the word authoritarian, because I don't think that authoritarian is bad. I think authoritarian is good. I think that property enforcement is authoritarian. We don't need less authoritarianism. We need the correct form of authoritarianism. We need responsible authority. We need responsible authoritarians.
That's like
elites. Elites aren't bad. I just want impressive elites.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like we don't want. It's not that we don't want power to exist. It's that we want the power to be accountable. And again, private property is a good way of making people accountable for that. And power that is unaccountable is corrosive and corrupting. Power that is accountable is actually pretty purifying.
Yes, it's purifying and refining.
Yes, it is. And I think I just quoted you again. That I think that was something you said originally. But if you have power, this is why. Okay, if you're a libertarian, you can easily, pretty much, with very little effort, take power in your local town. And again, as long as there's a lot of people, across the nation who are doing it, they simply don't have the budget to do it. And once people start figuring out that, they actually don't have the ability to enforce this, and their enforcement mechanisms are pretty limited. Like, this seems pretty. I was like, that's when the people, you're gonna eventually, it's gonna hit a critical mass where, the government publicly loses the war, or I should say the war on COVID. By the way, they've lost. I think Yarvin made this point the other day that war tends to kick our ass. Like we lost the war on alcohol, or we lost the war on drugs. We lost the war on terror. Congratulations to terror on the war on terror, and war on poverty has kicked our ass up and down. And I'm sure the war on COVID, it's going to be basically the same. And but I think this one is much quicker and easier to win because we have the tools to do it, and they don't. And that's right. Yeah, and I think this is by the way, the Mises GOP, you are now able to donate to it, or at least probably as of tomorrow. I think they're still Anadot. I put all the information into Anadot, and I think they approve my donation account tomorrow for Mises GOP, where I can start raising money to put libertarian and Praxian, paleo libertarian, I should say. We're not doing that thin libertarian bullshit. Give me the paleos, and we're going to put a whole bunch of paleo libertarians in power. And they're going to say, fuck no, we're not enforcing it. That's an unenforceable law, and screw you, fuck the federal government. We're not doing it. And in fact, we're going to do a blanket nullification of all federal laws. If we still like the federal law, we're going to pass it here ourselves and then enforce it. But we're going to be enforcing our own laws. We're not enforcing their laws. So screw them.
You're saying that you're not going to be leading with messaging about how we believe that every single person has their own right to bodily autonomy. You're not going to. It's not the way to go.
Talk about just taking the football and you had a wide open, the running back is just wide open. I'm here to catch it. I'm unopposed. No one between me and the end field, and you just spike the football instead. It's like, oh my God, the LP, they're raising money right now to ostensibly to oppose the vaccine mandates, and instead of just taking a really specific issue like vaccine mandates, they're generalizing it to all bodily autonomy and everything else. If you read their description, I can't believe you would do something like this. It's like, talk about, I mean, for the people who talk about having the right message, you bosh the message. It's like that's the wrong one. You don't want to generalize it to all bodily autonomy. You keep it focused on vaccine mandates for your fucking kids, and all I don't know, whatever, 30 seconds, 45 seconds of whatever. I think they're having $100,000. That's probably like a 30-second ad. that's oh my gosh, no, to just keep it focused on the kids. You got 30 seconds and you're going to, waste, I don't know, 2 seconds on bodily autonomy. And worse is like, you're saying, oh, this is like the hypocrisy of the duopoly. Like for the Democrats, this is not hypocrisy. It's like, okay, it's like, this is standard operating procedure as far as they're concerned. You might have a little bit of an argument when it comes to the Republicans, but even then they're on the right side of this issue, and they're actually doing the right messaging. So where there's like, no, we oppose this, we're not doing it. And I will use all power that I have to oppose this thing. And like that, like I saw like not DeSantis, but DeSantis's press secretary was like the hot blonde Michael Malice of Twitter, and she was like tweeting out from DeSantis like, no, we're going to use all powers of government to oppose this thing, and because you don't have this right, and this is not enforceable, and and I'm the governor of Florida, I'm the God King governor of Florida, and I'm not letting you do it. So. And I think DeSantis will win that fight. And he's not there saying that and he even said, like, we're not going to wait for, the Supreme Court to give us permission. We're kind of just going to do it and fuck you. Because it's like, that's like, and I guarantee if the Supreme Court comes in and, says, oh no, you have to do it, which is something I give it like a 75% chance they will uphold this, these mandates. DeSantis is probably going to pull an Andrew Jackson and say, cute orders, have fun enforcing it. And they just, the federal government, the executive branch does not have that ability, short of like calling in the military, which, it's like, if you're trying to start a civil war, that's how you do it.
I'm looking at that ad. It says it's the anti-mandate ad. At the top, it says Libertarian, the party of principle. First of all, no, Libertarians are not the only party of principle. The Democrats are a party of principle. They have their own principles, but they're very, very dedicated to them, and they're very faithful to them. One of those principles is hypocrisy.
Yes.
It's still a principle. This is party of principle is meaningless horse shit. This doesn't, party of principle is like liberty. It means anything to anybody. What you are is you're a wishy-washy squish that you're allowing anybody to impute any definition upon you. You don't occupy any space. You're like, oh, sorry for being, oh, excuse me. This is the most beta shit ever. And then it says, help fund a national ad to show people that the Libertarian Party is the only party that supports bodily autonomy and consent in all things.
That's some weird language right there. It really should have been, in all things, we require consent. There's some really weird language there, and I think Tho picked up on it, and he pointed it out, and I'm like,
it was written. I know what it is. It was written by a woman. This was written by a woman
and a pro-abortion woman.
Yes,
and a pro-abortion woman.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, pro-abortion woman.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can. Exactly. It's hilarious that we can see that. Like we can you can smell it on them. What I was going to say when I started reading this is that this to me reads like it was written by a 50-year-old single librarian who lives in Cleveland. Like that's the like I don't know. That's just the scent of it, and that's the messaging, and that's the messaging that just turns people off, that nobody's interested in. It doesn't do anything for anybody except for those types of people. So now you're just knockoff Democrats. That's the what is the word I'm looking for here? It's kind of like it's like the ant smell of the libertarian, of this kind of messaging, like that ants can smell other ants and like kind of can see them and recognize them.
It's like the pheromones. Yeah,
like pheromones. That's the vibe that you get off of this. What DeSantis did, and very appropriately, is he made this about protection, about providing safety, providing security, because ultimately that's what people are looking for. Doesn't matter what political party people vote for, they're looking for security. They're voting for security. And libertarians aren't offering security. They're offering rhetoric.
They're offering principles at the time when you really need security. It's like the people are like, I'm here to buy security. Like, have some principles. And you're like, oh my God, this is like the worst possible message. I mean, I do think Dave will pick up on that and try to change it, because that's the wrong message. This is absolutely the wrong message of what you should be trying to push right now. This is not what the principles are not what what this moment calls for. This is like the time where you're like, nope, time to fight. Yeah, I need power. And this is this would be the perfect time for the Libertarian Party to say, here's why you should elect the Libertarian in your town as mayor, because he's going to protect your kids from this. Like, that's the appropriate message. That's what I'm, doing with Mises GOP. And I've talked about this on at least a few shows now, that, I'm here to get paleo-libertarian mayors, elected. And they're going to be the ones to saying, fuck no, we're not doing any of this federal bull crap. But this is an illegitimate government anyway. Biden cheated his way in there, and all of his laws, as far as I'm concerned, are illegitimate. And if we happen to like a law, I'm going to pass it here and enforce our own laws. But his laws are not ours. And he's an occupying regime, all of that stuff, and he's here to hurt our kids. He's here to hurt our kids. I'm here to protect the kids. If you give me power, I'll protect them. I'll use that. And by the way, the guy who's in there right now, he's a squish. And if he had the backbone to do this, he'd be here standing in front of you and talking to you about this. He's not here, though. And that's how you can tell that he's a squish. And he's not going to protect you. I'll protect you. And that is the best possible message. And it shows the real power of liberty. Or at least as we conceive, again, because it's kind of this amorphous word that means anything, but it just shows that, okay, if you give a libertarian power, you will actually get the safety that you want, and you'll get liberty as a side effect. But if you're running on principles, if you're running on, liberty, like, this is not the time for that. They're looking for security and protection right now. And if you're not selling that, it's like, maybe you can say, oh, well, liberty is protection. It's like, no, you are the protection. You are the protector. That it's like,
why they don't get this kind of message? Because they don't actually care about these people. They don't care about the people that they would be protecting. They just care that the state is an inconvenience to them. They care that it personally is disruptive and that it bothers them. The reason I know that is because of the way that they talk about it. They just talk about all the bad things that it does and all the evils, but they don't come at it from the perspective of, here are the people being harmed by this, and I am here as an advocate to stand in front of tyranny and protect these people. If you care about people, that's the phrasing that you'll use. That's the way you'll naturally talk about it. Because they come from the position of, individualism and everyone should be free to do whatever they want. Like, I don't have the right to speak for other people. It's just wishy-washy liberal bullshit. If you actually care about these people, then you'll put yourself in a position to defend and protect them. And that is the spirit of liberty.
The spirit of liberty is taking power to use it to actually, be the liberator of people. Okay, this is why we have this concept of someone who actually fights back chaos and restores order and frees the people. It's not like the people ever freed themselves. Okay, there's no stories where that just happens. It's always like a strong man or a strong group of leaders that do all the fighting on behalf of the people, and the people will support them, of course, but the people can't self-organize. They don't have that capacity. And by the way, they shouldn't, because again, this is how our society survives and thrives, is that some people are specialized for different things, and some people are specialized for leadership, and everybody else isn't. Some people are specialized for farming, and everybody else isn't. Some plumbing, software development, podcasting, and everything that, it thrives on specialization, where the vast majority of people do not do a certain act. We only leave it to specialists. So you have to understand, okay, what we need right now are specialists for providing, for supplying liberty, to them, and by using power to do that. Because let's face it, what is the libertarian definition of power really? Of liberty, really? It's power. You're saying, I want personal power. Yeah, you're not saying I want personal liberty. You're saying I want personal power, and that's the power to choose for myself without the threat of aggression. Which, by the way, how do you make yourself unaggressible? You become too terrifying to aggress against. Like you basically become the state, because that's what it means to be the monopoly on aggression, is that no one wants to touch you, because the state actually has the has liberty as libertarians conceive of it, because they're basically unaggressible. And you're saying, I want to be a state unto myself. I want to have that power unto myself. So if you're saying that, liberty does not require power, good ideas don't require force, you're wrong. It's like, good ideas do require force, because the bad ideas always have force. It's like they always have force on their side. That's exactly the point. You need, if you want good ideas to thrive, you're going to need force, because the bad ideas always come with force. Like, no shit.
I'm so glad that you just said this, because that just clicked for me. This specific idea just clicked with me. That on one hand, let's say anarcho-capitalism. Anarcho-capitalism reduces to property rights. It's fundamentally about property rights. What is property? Property is an implicit threat of violence. Property is, this is the line at which I will engage in violence against you if you cross that line. That's the definition of property. Property is fundamentally about using force to protect an idea. And ANCAPs will start from that position and say good ideas don't require force. They're defeating their own, they're refuting their own fundamental premise when they say good ideas don't require force. And I've said good ideas don't require force, I don't know how many times. But this formulation of it just clicked with me.
The left has no problem with force, but they also, in their Machiavellian nature, they also paint themselves as the pacifists and as the peaceful ones. And, right wingers only want to have guns because they have small dicks and that kind of thing. So basically, when they're saying we want to take their guns, we want to take your guns, what they're saying is, we know that's what's keeping private property in check and bodily autonomy in check, mostly. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But, so you have the right tends to be a little more individualistic, even anyone on the right. On the left, we have collectivism. And I think we all know that. I'm not saying anything novel here. But it seems like the ones who want the most individualism all go to libertarianism. And then those people, because they're such individuals, have such a tough time collectivizing to try to come together and get any power. And they're such individuals, it just seems like they don't want power. You talk about having a zero time preference for power. And that's one thing I think, and I actually bookmarked the tweet. I'll read it right now. We'll see if anybody recognizes who this tweet might be by. It says, libertarians treat power as a morality problem the same way lefties treat economics as a morality problem. It just shows that each group doesn't know what they're talking about. Both are engineering problems. And I bookmarked that tweet because, I mean, that is perfect. And it's exactly the problem. I mean, you will hear every libertarian go, I can't be trusted with power. As soon as I get to power, I'm going to turn into Bill Clinton. I'm going to turn into Hillary Clinton. I mean, that's not like, you've never examined yourself to see if that's actually true or not. I mean, as many people as were brought to libertarianism by Ron Paul, he was the one guy who never got corrupted by power. And you're like, oh, I can never be like him.
Except you want to be
you're
Ron
placing
Paul
him on a pedestal. What?
It's like they want to be Ron Paul 2.0. It's like they're literally billing themselves as that, but then saying, oh, I can't be that because I'll be like, oh, no, I would be like corrupted immediately and turn into like Hillary Clinton and start gunning down black kids in the streets. And yeah, it's like, no, it's like, be realistic, man. And, and I'm going to pull a Michael Malice right now and say, well, if you own property, you have power right now. So, and it's like all property is power. And it's like, it's true, but it's not quite honest. Cause again, we're equivocating here, but and of course I know the author of that tweet. He's me. And but that is so true that what was the next thing you just said? After that
about
Shoot.
Ron Paul. We were all brought in by Ron Paul, and Ron Paul, never.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like with Ron Paul, if you're trying to bill yourself as like Ron Paul 2.0, Ron Paul actually did take power, and he used it to vote no every single time. And I guarantee
Jeremiah Chance is making a good point here. He says, to be frank, Pete, I wouldn't trust most libertarians with any real societal responsibility, and that goes back to having impressive elites. Even Hoppe talks about that. When Hoppe in What Must Be Done, Hoppe talks about, for the local strategy to take hold, you're going to have to rely on impressive elites, and the people that everyone looks to locally. Everyone respects, everyone knows, and everyone has a good opinion of. That most people have a good opinion of. I'm sorry, Andrew.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's actually a perfect segue, because like if you let's say you don't have this right now, just being the one guy who's like, hey, I have the courage to stand up and say no, and the other guy doesn't. And this, and you can go be Ron Paul 2.0 with executive power. Okay, granted, he was a legislature, but I guarantee if we put Ron Paul in any executive position, he would make the right decision every time. And I would fully be comfortable with having him as my mayor, knowing I would feel very safe. And if you actually want to be Ron Paul 2.0, go run for mayor on the idea that I'm going to keep you safe. And people will, because everyone naturally reveres the warrior. The warrior that keeps himself safe, your Marduk beating back chaos. And, again, this is an archetype as old as time. People will always revere you for that, as being the guy keeping them safe and helping them to organize each other. And if you just, get over this fear of power, that, because again, not all power is bad. Some of it is pure. Power can be corrosive. It can also be purifying, depending on how accountable it is. If you are, as a libertarian, are at least going to be accountable to your principles, that's at least some form of accountability. And and granted, if you're like the left, where you treat power as an end in itself, which basically is where their principles are derived from, they're actually extremely consistent with their principles, particularly their incentives. They're not consistent with their ideas, because their ideas are bullshit. That's a rationalization. They have their incentive, and then the ideas are like the rationalization for that incentive. The incentive is to aggress against you and to accumulate power. And and they're going to be reducing any sort of rhetoric it takes to get that. And if you understand that about the left, that they're actually very consistent when it comes to, if you understand that they behave their incentives virtually 100% of the time, and and they're not, they were never anti-war. Bush made a really big mistake, in lying us into a war, and he exposed himself to, them being able to use that as a billy club to take power from him. That was why they were so vehemently anti-war back in the 2010s and the early 2000s, was that, this was a way for them to achieve power, and it worked in 2006 and 2008. And, they got the power they wanted, and then they stopped caring about war. Shocker. It wasn't because Obama broke their brains. It was because they got the power that they could have gotten from it, and there was no more power to get from it. And then there was power to be gotten from going to war and starting all the wars. And they started doing that. That was what, and they're always consistent when it comes to, we will take whatever position it takes to get power. And that's not hypocrisy. That's that's actually consistency. See, consistency is a bad thing. But it's, their principle is power, and they're always going to be consistent with it. And and so if you as a libertarian, if you can actually be Ron Paul and be accountable to your own principles, go run for office, and protect people. And because that's the sort of thing that would make power purifying, is that it's accountable. And if you just think of what Matt said earlier about property is power. It is an incentive. It's a declaration that of aggression if you cross that line. And basically, and libertarians actually say this all the time, that like you're basically the dictator of your own private property, your property, your rules. You're the dictator. This isn't up for democracy. And they usually say, like, my rights are not up for are not up for discussion, much less a vote. And I think they're correct. It's a really odd way of phrasing it, but yes. If you are going to be, that if you already understand that you have power by just owning property, that this is in fact power, property is in fact a declaration of I have power over this, and I have the right to power over this land. And, and that doesn't corrupt you, because it's in fact, it's actually purifying, it's good. Then understand that, okay, just take a little bit more, and that people are willing to give you in order to keep them safe. And go be Ron Paul 2.0 that way. And if you're interested in that, if you're a paleo libertarian, again, join up with Mises GOP. I'm raising money now to try to put libertarian mayors in positions of power where they can actually protect people.
I was thinking about I was kind of riffing in my mind on the idea of the way like we were just talking about libertarians seeing themselves rightly as like the dictator of their own property. And so if you take the theoretical system of individualism, the idea that each person is a dictator of his own property, and that the fundamental sovereign unit in society is the individual, then what you're describing as what you're saying, like theoretically, the legal framework for your philosophy is a whole bunch of tiny little monarchies all mashed up really tightly together. And then of those, supposedly those monarchs, many of them are monarchs who don't actually have any physical property. They're sovereigns, but they have no property to actually indicate that. It's just like a legal claim. And you could see pretty clearly, if you think about that, if you talk about taking Southern California and dividing it up into 100 little mini monarchies, that sort of system would be really, really nice if you could get it to work. But there's so many pressures against it working effectively that way that eventually you're going to have people who are consolidating power. It's inevitable that you're going to get, of those 100 monarchies, over a very short period of time, it's going to be like, you know what? It's just not efficient to manage the transportation of goods, and when you get things broken down that small, it's just not efficient. It's just not functionally efficient for groups of people. So eventually they're going to delegate their power to a higher sovereign. That's inevitable.
Well, it's like, how can you be a full-time king and a full-time farmer?
Right. You can't.
It's like, you can only do one well, and then you outsource the rest. Like, I have no idea how to grow food, and I would be fucked if I had to try. And, granted, I know how to fast, but I can only fast for like 2 or 3 days at a time. And, I start dropping weight pretty quickly. So that's not going to work. That's not a long-term strategy. And if you understand that this is all based on specialization, and that the state is just the specialized the people who are specialized at aggression. And again, it's not a wonderful thing to be specialized at, but it exists. And again, if you understand this whole thing of aggression has value, and people are just outsourcing that, the supply of that value the same way they outsource the supply of food, to farmers. And they're just outsourcing their supplying of aggression to the state. That's all they're doing there. And this is basically inevitable, because this thing has value, and there's no real getting rid of that. So
that makes the anarcho-capitalist position just fundamentally
it's transitory.
It's stillborn. Like it doesn't ever. It's not possible to move it beyond the theoretical, with the exception perhaps of somehow through generations of evolving and building through like blockchain technology, you could somehow get to where you could build out a framework, an actual technical, practical framework for making each individual person functionally a sovereign unit. But I think that as I'm learning about it, I still barely know anything. You guys both probably know more than I do. But as I'm understanding the way that it works, it's becoming clear to me that we're not moving in that direction. These technologies are not going to move us to greater and greater isolation or atomization of the individual. They're going the opposite direction. They're moving people more and more into defined tribes that are going to function with like the tribe as the sovereign unit. And this is kind of an old model, but it's going to become new, and it's going to happen technologically, I think. So I think that just on a fundamental, like, theoretical basis, libertarians, people, ANCAPs, people who are thinking in this individualist way, I think that we're evolving beyond it. It's not going to survive into the future. And if you're not prepared for that, then that means whatever happens next, whatever comes next, is going to be something you're reacting to, rather than being someone who determines what those societies are going to look like. So again, this involves, you have to take responsibility for your life. You have to pick up yourself, whatever you're doing, and begin bearing responsibilities. This is the Jordan Peterson message. Start taking responsibility. Because if we need libertarian-minded people who are running for mayor or whatever, we need those people. We need those people to exist. Quality people like that, who have proven themselves and who are insulated from the system sufficiently that they're not dependent upon the system to survive. That's how everyone gets got. They're dependent upon the system. Now is the opportunity to get yourself onto a parallel track, a parallel economy that is independent of the old way, the old system. If we can get enough people who think like us on that track, who are all working in that way and establishing themselves in positions of leadership, they'll get authority. It's inevitable. It will happen. You will get authority, and you can parlay that authority into power and into actually giving these ideas any sort of teeth, like their ability to actually latch themselves onto the world and begin spreading. I think this isn't me like advocating for it, like saying this should happen. I'm saying this is what's going to happen, and you can get on board with it or not.
Well, I wanted to mention, I know when you start talking about elites, libertarians start losing their minds and everything. There's a Hans Hermann Hoppe piece that I pasted into the chat there. It's called Natural Elites, Intellectuals, and the State. And Hoppe's he's the guy you want to go to for things like this. I mean, this is what he studied. And it's on Mises.org. If you go to Mises.org and put in Natural Elites, Intellectuals, in the State, it's all on there. You can read it right on there. And just get over this. Get over this thing, because you look out, and the people that are considered elites nowadays, they're not elites. They're
plebs.
Yeah, they're not the ones with all the power, or they're not the ones who can wield power. The natural elites, the people who are natural elites, are, them, you respect them, you just don't realize that they're elites because you know them and you respect them, and they may know you.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe check out that Hoppe article, because when it comes to this stuff, Hoppe has broken my brain on so many things that I just assumed, and then it was just like, oh God, okay, jeez, and he just nails it 100%.
And this is, I think what Hoppe is, going for is actually something that Matt has said a lot. Like, how can you spread liberty if you don't have any liberty? And if you understand that, liberty just means personal power, it's the personal power to choose, for your own life, then that means if you actually want to spread liberty, you have to be able to spread power, and you have to have power in order to spread it. So that's go. If you actually are serious about, trying to spread liberty, go take power and spread it out. That is the way. And that, it is doable, and there is power right there in those local governments. Again, at an election for like a kind of like a town the size of, like, I don't know, maybe Lockhart, where Buck is, or places unknown where Pete is, where they have like 14 to 24,000 people or something like that. Those elections range from like a few $100 to maybe a couple G's, and that's about it. And so if you guys are if you want to go take that, That's pretty up for grabs. As like that is not expensive. You do not need a ton of money to win a local election. And if you win, like you can actually use that position to spread liberty, because again, liberty is just personal power. And the liberty is the personal power to choose. You're making every man as unaggressible as the state. Because the state actually has liberty.
If you want to start organizing, like people who are listening, if you want to start organizing for something, you've got money burning in your pocket, but you don't know what to do, and you're like, okay, maybe I'll just donate to the LPMC. Start coordinating with other people and relocate yourselves all together to a small town somewhere or to neighboring towns and start taking over local polities. Just go transplant yourself there. I'm talking specifically to people who are in the position to do so. If you can't, don't come at me saying, "Oh, I can't afford that. I've got all these." Okay, fuck off. You're not the person I'm talking to. I'm talking to the people who can afford it, the people who are in the position to. Amy and I are going to be relocating out of Southern California, and we want to find people. We want to find a community of people who are all like-minded, who all feel the same way, who are all interested in homesteading and homeschooling, and we want to take over a community. This is the way it starts. You take over one community. And it's kind of like the Free State Project, except not. Just take over a community and start instituting your values there, and take over local positions of government. And if you could start doing this in areas that are, like you said, low population, Nebraska or Arkansas or wherever, some podunk area, you can actually have quite a bit of an influence there. And if you get enough people, it wouldn't take you that many people to kind of swing a little bit of influence in a given region. And you could basically eliminate the effect of lockdowns on a lot of this type of stuff. It wouldn't be that hard to get a hold of a sheriff, to get a hold of a sheriff's office. And sheriffs can arrest FBI agents. Like, sheriffs can do a lot. So if people want to organize for something, if they're like, well, what should I spend my money on? Spend your money on this. You don't need national campaigns. You don't want national campaigns for this type of work. You want to do this stuff under the radar. You don't want headlines. You want to avoid journalists. You don't want to talk to people about it. Just keep your head down. Don't advertise it. Don't broadcast it to everyone. Be very choosy about the people that you're going to work with, the people who you're going to relocate with, and start building tribes. I mean this, like legit old school tribes, and be very if you don't understand blockchain in some sense, like I don't understand it at all. So I'm trying to surround myself with people who do. You've got to do the same, because they're the ones who are going to build the future economy, and they're not going to give it to just anybody. The early adopters are going to be people who are already close and trustworthy. Like Cyprian down in Saipan has been creating like transaction technology. So you can pay in crypto. You can all split a bill and pay in crypto at a restaurant. And then he said before that he has businesses there who are now paying their employees in crypto. They get their paychecks in crypto. He's building that sort of tech down there. But he's not just going to go throw it on Google and just give it to anybody. People like that are innovating in these spaces, if you want to be able to use them as a lifeboat, you need to get connected with them now. And you need to be putting yourself in a position where you're not dependent upon the system, and you can port yourself onto a parallel economy. I think this is the type of organizing, and this is the type of message that people need to be talking now. Not go, let's do $100,000 ad, or let's go throw all this money at this campaign over here. That's all wasted resources. That's all repainting the deck chairs on the Titanic. It's not worthy. It's not a worthy use of your time, and it's not going to yield the dividends that this type of thing that I'm talking about could do. So, I mean, that would, if people want to know, we keep hearing this kind of well, you guys don't have any ideas. You're just critics and you don't bring any ideas.
We're obviously,
number one, there's people who don't listen to us, but there you go. Someone that wants to can go clip this little spot where we were just talking about this. This is what you can do. If you don't want to get involved in the LP, but you want to put money toward something, get involved in financing and funding this sort of thing.
Yeah, I heard there was one guy the other night who was like, oh, those post-libertarians, their idea is to go make a covenant community small somewhere with a whole bunch of guns and fight off the federal government. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing is further from
my favorite is, oh, they're all black-pilled.
Right.
It's like, I'm the most white-pilled guy I know. Maybe I'm overconfident. Like, to the point of being overconfident.
I can be black-pilled, but I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I wasn't
right.
If I didn't have hope. And really, if you're in a city and you're black-pilled, get the fuck out of a city, go someplace small, and that white pill will start creeping in real quick. Real quick. And I mean, I just don't. It's because we're not doing we're not doing the path that they want. The path that they want, which I'm still not 100% sure what it is I know it's local politics, and I'm 100% behind that. I'm 100% anyone who wants to pursue local politics. I'll say this. I had a conversation with Michael Heiss very recently in the last 2 weeks. We talked for about an hour and a half. Dude, we only disagree on like one thing. I mean, really, he's concentrating on local politics, and I was trying to help them. I'm trying to say, okay, this may help more. This strategy may help more. If people come in knowing that you are about local politics, then you're going to get people who come in and they're excited right from the start to do this. But if you come in like Ron Paul had this thing where he went out there and it was this broad narrative, and people thought, oh my God, I remember someone wrote an article about if Ron Paul got elected, this is what Washington, D.C. would be like in 4 years. And it was like, no one's paying for the buses are private. There's no more meters on the side of the road where you have to parking meters, things like that. Everybody's carrying a gun. And I'm like, you're delusional. You're delusional because
you would have to force that on those people.
Yeah. And plus, why did Ron gave this grand like illusion basically that people could not jump that. Yeah, it's like I've said recently. I've said this privately. I'll say it publicly. I've probably said it publicly too. I've been around Ron Paul a lot, okay? And no one ever walks up to Ron Paul and shakes his hand and says, Dr. Paul, I want to thank you. We went and we took over our local government. We're privatizing the schools now, and thank you for the inspiration. What do? They go up to him and they say, Dr. Paul, you changed me.
You saved my soul.
It's a very individual kind of thing. And having the idea for individual liberty is great. And I think Jason lays out plans towards individual liberty. But if you actually care about other people and you say you have a Christian vision of wanting to help your community, it's going to have to go beyond the individual. And how do you do that? Well, maybe when you're laying out the message right from the start, the message should include not this grand vision, but a very focused vision of we are going to be about local politics. We do not care about the 202 area code anymore. That's why I give money every month to the 10th Amendment Center. Michael Bolden told me a long time ago, he's like, I don't care about the 202 area code. By working locally and working with states, that's what we're fighting. We can do that, but we're going to concentrate on doing it here. I'm not going to go to DC for anything. I'm not going to go lobby DC for anything. And that's where it's at. And that's where the message has to start. It's like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to create 10,000 Liechtensteins. We're going to have 10,000 city states and hopefully more. Hopefully we can expand upon that. And just
yeah, I mean, for 10,000.
Jason, I'm sorry, I don't care about my camera right now. So that has to be the start of it. That has to be right from the start. People have to know this is going to be about a local revolution. And if you're not, then you may be preaching a message that people grab onto and think that this grand vision is going to happen. And
it's like, I really think that they learned the wrong lesson from Ron Paul. And I mean, what you said, was about him was right, is that they don't go up to him and thank him for for inspiring them to take over a town, which, by the way, if you're joining Mises GOP, you're eventually going to do that to Ron Paul, where we are thanking him for inspiring us to go take over a town. That's the actual way of doing it, because they took the wrong lesson from Ron Paul. They took the lesson from it that trying to achieve power is impossible, but the fact he was there shows it is possible, and it's that much more possible down at your local level, at your local Liechtenstein. And I would say that the correct lesson is that libertarians can win power from the right, or really paleo libertarians like Ron Paul can, and and I think there's been more than enough examples of paleo libertarians winning power that that we could make a real we could actually start making real pushes here. And if you understand, okay, for 10,000 Liechtensteins, you're going to need 10,000 kings, duh. That's that really is like a no duh thing. Even though they say this, they don't make the logical connection of what that actually means in practice. It never, for whatever reason, their minds always stay in the theory and in the clouds. It never actually translates to, okay, what does that actually look like in practice? Okay, if you say you want to do 10,000 Liechtensteins, you need 10,000 kings for that. So find me 10,000 kings and run them for local office. And like with these local elections, you're talking like 10% turnout. Like that's about what you're looking at. I looked this up with Buck the other day. In his local election in a town of 15,000, they had like a 10% turnout for the whole election. So if you assume that 50-50 goes for the Dems and which it didn't, because it's like a 70% red town, and it's really a one-sided election in favor of the Republicans. And so if you understand that you only have to get like a few hundred votes and you win, that's it. It's like, this is very doable. Like, you don't even need to spend money on that. Just, knock on a few hundred doors and talk to a few hundred people about, I'm here to protect your kids. And next time there's a school board election, you run in and say, I'm here to shut these guys down. Vote for me. It's like, because you have a few dozen ears right there who are going to that's the guy. These guys are not the guy. That's the guy. We're putting him in there so he can tell them what for, and he can vote them down, because this guy's here to protect us. And it only takes like a few hundred votes to really win these things, because most people, when they show up, they don't care about local elections because they think it's not valuable. And they think there's no power there. They're wrong about that. And again, as we discussed it last time with our discussion of Hoppe's bottom-up revolution of what must be done, which again, if you haven't watched that yet, you need to go back and watch that. What must be done? But Hoppe figured this all out in 1997, which was I was 5 at the time. So that's I'm dating myself just a little bit, but he had this figured out decades ago. And and it's time for us to really start implementing what must be done. And and it's so doable. It's cheap, and it really just buy yourself a 200 pair of sneakers and go knock on doors, and just was a simple message of, I'm here to keep you safe. This is exactly what's going to spread liberty, because again, liberty is just personal power. And
I think that there's a dynamic here where we get, I think people feel like we keep moving the goalposts because we're really making critiques on two fronts when we're critiquing the current libertarian status quo. We're critiquing them on the strategy front and on the message front. We're saying that they have the wrong strategy in the route and the way that they're thinking about this, the way they're trying to win it at a higher level than they need to. But they also have the wrong message, because the message that they're leading with is this kind of wishy-washy equality, autonomy for everyone message, and they need to be selling this message of like we've been talking about. You need to be keeping people safe, that you're trying to provide security to people. So I want to make sure that's clear, that we're not moving the goalposts around. We're saying this is true, and also this is true. You guys need a different strategy, and also you need a different message. But even beyond that, for people who are looking for things to do to try to contribute to this, if we're going to have 10,000 Liechtensteins, and those 10,000 Liechtensteins need 10,000 Prince Hans Adams. Then what those 10,000 Prince Hans Adams need is support networks and infrastructure and innovation, technological innovation that makes their job easier. If we're going to try to port to a new sort of ruling governance system,
read this.
yes.
It's Prince Hans Adams' book, The State in the Third Millennium. You'll be blown away.
I want to read it. I've heard so much about it. For people who don't know, the ruling monarch of Liechtenstein is effectively an ANCAP, and he's friends with Hans Hermann Hoppe. And that sort of model is kind of the sort of thing I'm thinking about. But they have a very specific culture. They have a culture that
you know how they pay their bills, right?
How?
He's a CEO of like an international company.
Yeah. He's like independently wealthy. Yeah.
You don't have to pay you don't have to pay taxes if you don't want to in Liechtenstein. And if you do, it's below 10%. I think it might be below 5%. He allowed everyone to like the hamlets to secede. If individuals wanted to secede, they could, and they could stay there and everything. And I mean, you know, I can get my German citizenship back and see about going there, but you know,
I've heard that their immigration process is one of the strictest in the world.
Yeah, but I might have an in because I have German citizenship. So I could get in. So
but that's interesting that this very libertarian, one of the probably the most libertarian country in the world has one of the strictest immigration policies in the world.
Well, doesn't that make sense? I mean, wouldn't Ancapistan have that?
Right.
I mean,
this is what I'm saying. Authoritarianism.
What would the immigration be? Yeah. What would immigration be? You know, would it exist? It would be people. It would be like, okay, some company saying, oh, so you want to come here? Okay, we'll get you set up with a place to live. I mean, it'd be more like what a lot of the major companies do now, where it's like, if they really want somebody, they'll get housing for them, they'll get this for them, and everything like that.
Right.
You know? And yeah, I just don't think. I think people think that Ancapistan is just going to would be this free for all where after a couple weeks the roads, everybody would be able to use the roads and you could travel on anyone's property and everything like that. And it's like, no, there'd be rules, and there would be.
I mean, what's your process for letting a stranger come into your house?
Right.
There probably isn't one. You probably want to know exactly who that person is.
And if someone comes into your house and say they come into your house and they start talking about now somebody comes into your house and they start talking about how beating children is really the only way to go. And I mean, you just beat them until they submit. If you're completely against that, you have every right to kick them out of your home. They have an opinion you don't like.
And then if they want to group themselves with other people who feel the same way and then collectively all throw you out of their area, that's entirely their right. If they want to collectively bind their sovereignty into a collective, they could do that.
And the child beaters could do that too. And then at least we'd know where to drop the drone. Privately owned.
The McNuke.
Exactly. They're the private nuke. Yes.
Yeah.
And but yeah, and so right now it's like the calls to action are, one, move, get yourself out of these big cities that are blackpilling you and taking your liberty away. It's like the first step is just move. Get to somewhere where you can actually start building, these, 10,000 Liechtensteins, because Liechtenstein's not huge. It's a small place.
And it's like 40,000 people, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's like a small town. So if you need to move. It's like, that's like step number one is get yourself out of these bad situations, start controlling your income, start working remotely and be able to do your job anywhere. And or if not, find a different way. You need to like that's step number one. Step number two is help fund the rest of us to start fund electing these Mayor Bucks and Mayor Pete's who can actually start building relationships with these people and actually take power and then use that power to spread liberty. because again, that's all liberty is. It's just personal power. And so, and you can't spread liberty if you don't have any, and you can't spread power if you don't have any.
And what better time than this?
What better
time than now?
It's like they're looking for someone to give this power to, and you're like, no, don't give it to anyone. Power evil. And it's like, no, power here is purifying. Is here to protect people, and you saying is evil is you marking yourself as the enemy, because basically they see you as the exact same as the left, who's here to subvert and undermine their own security. And instead, you could actually get some liberty for yourself as, again, power. Liberty is just personal power. It's the power to choose over your own life. And where can you get that besides the state? Go run for local government. Get that power and then start spreading it, because that is spreading liberty. And so that's those are the calls to action. Is 1, move. 2, help fund us. Again, Mises GOP. The donation link is probably going to be ready tonight or tomorrow. And we're going to be putting good mayors, good if you're a good paleo libertarian in Texas or Florida, this is where we're starting. We're going to be, trying to fund a whole lot of, 10,000 Liechtensteins here in the deep South. And because these are people who are already, they're already ready to have this, secession, and like they're on board. And it's like, we just need to get the power to pull it off. And it's not, and we're starting right now. So, Pete, you said you had a conversation with Michael Heiss. Like, how committed are they to these local elections? Are they still going to be
just 100? I mean, that's what Michael. Michael can't control what everyone in the Mises Caucus talks about. He's out there doing his thing. He is busy as fuck, and his vision is just everything is local elections, local bills, local laws passed. I know where he's gone, and I'm 100% behind him. He's brought in a lot of people in the last 12 months, and obviously they're not. If you have 10,000 people, I mean, really, and somebody has a vision, the leader has a vision, communicates that vision, there's still going to be a ton of people out there who aren't going to be, they're just there to ride.
They didn't get the memo.
Yeah, or they're just there to ride. They're just there to say, oh, I'm part of the Mises Caucus too. They join the club. It just goes back to Pareto. Everything goes back to Pareto, 80-20. So, I mean, I know what Michael is all about, and I support everything that he's doing. I mean, we have one probably disagreement, but it's fine. It's not something that
are they going to be actually prohibiting the higher levels of office runs for higher levels of office other than local? Because I mean that would show me that they had real commitment. If they said, okay, no more U.S. House runs, no more Senate runs, no more state House runs. It's like
I don't know. He doesn't. I don't think he sees the benefit in doing something like that. So he's not going to be prohibiting it. I know they're not going to run those candidates, but if they're not actively prohibiting it, other people are going to do it, and that wastes resources that need to be spent, down here at the local level. I mean, it's a question of quality control and resource control. If you don't control the resources, you don't have power, and that's like the first thing. Again, you can always find out where the power is by following the money. So it's like that, that's where I question the commitment to, because people, they want the ego runs. And this is something I sense a lot, is they have these egos they want to fill by running against the state. And, and I saw the other day that the LP had some sort of message about, well, the reason people, shouldn't go for like Dave Smith, this is like coming from like the more lefty libertarians, is that nobody knows who Dave Smith is because they haven't seen his name on a ballot, like Joe Jorgensen. And I thought, you are so removed from reality if you think that's what knowing who, they didn't want, I remember what it was. They didn't want Dave to be the one to give the message, in this ad. They wanted it to be like someone like Joe Jorgensen, who was more recognizable. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I didn't know who George Jorgensen was when I shook her hand last year. in January of last year.
And so for it's like that, they have these just incredible ego runs. I feel like that's the sort of person who's attracted to the LP banners. They want to get the blue check mark, because you can't get a blue check mark for running for a local election. You just can't. And they want to get the blue check mark on their name and Twitter, and so they want to do like a Senate run or a congressional run or something like that. And it's just an ego trip for them. And I worry about the Mises Caucus falling into that same mindset of they're really just here to help the Democrats steal votes from Republicans, and that's all that is. And that was where that came from, is that they realized that the GOP really is their only competition. The Democrats don't want them. And the Democrats are not tempted by liberty. Only the Republicans are tempted by liberty. If you're going to be stealing votes it's not going to be from equal parties. You're going to be taking those from the Republicans. And this is, I feel like this is where they want to go, and they just want to continue the same spoiler candidate mistakes of the past LP. And if they were actually serious about taking power locally and focusing 100% on local issues, then you would say, all right, we control the LP now. No, 0 candidates get run, for anything higher than like mayor or city councilman, or, maybe like county chair or something like that.
We shall see. I mean, the way I look at it is this: the LP is not going anywhere. The Mises Caucus isn't going anywhere.
Agreed.
I want them to be effective in what they do. I want them to affect change on the local level. So I will help them in any way possible, and I'll do it without ego. I mean, I'll do it. I don't need, if I suggest something that works, I don't need recognition that it worked. I don't need a public pat on the back or anything like that. I'm in this because there are people like me who, I mean, it's selfishness for me. I want to live in a way that they just leave me alone. I'd like to control my own statecraft one day. I know that I can do that. And I have the ability to do that. I have the temperament to do it. And I want to help anyone that I see has the same goals as I do. I think that I probably have a lot of good ideas because I've read so much and read so many different people that I can help, and that's what I'm going to be there to do. Is I'm not going to crap on the Mises Caucus. Every once in a while, I'll crap on members because we've seen some of the stuff that they say about us. I mean, just the whole black pilling thing. That to me was just absolutely. I mean, I had to contact people privately and go, "What the fuck are you talking about? Black pilled? What the hell is wrong? Where's this coming from?" But I want to see them succeed. I want to see them succeed in Michael Heiss's vision. So I'm going to do everything that I can do to help them with that, and I'll do everything I can do to help locally here. And if that has to be through the GOP locally, I'm fine with that. I met Saturday night with some local libertarians. I don't think that they have any problem working through the GOP in local elections around here. And I think that just all that stuff should be laid out on the table. But I mean, one thing that I immediately said was, any idea of running a libertarian against Ron DeSantis is absolutely insane. And maybe a left libertarian, but a horrible left libertarian. But I said on a live stream with Scott Horton last night, I said, maybe before you get into election season, you go to DeSantis and you say, look, if you don't give us this, this, and this, and I mean right now, not after the election, we're going to run a libertarian against you. We're going to take votes away. And just do it as a threat. Just do it as an empty threat. You're not planning on doing it. You're just seeing if you can get something. That's playing politics. And that'd be playing good politics. And I mean, that's one suggestion that I've given, and we'll see if people listen to me. I don't know.
Get him to endorse a few of your local candidates if you're going to run them. It's like, that's the sort of thing that's worth. You know, you can't say, oh, I want the agricultural commissioner or something like that. Okay, that's too big of an ask. You know, your threat is not worth that. Just say, hey, we want you to endorse a few of these guys who are from some local mayor somewhere. And so, you know, in the name of a town he probably doesn't recognize. So that's exactly the sort of thing that he might actually be willing to give you. And again, don't follow through on it, but you know, that's because that's going to be a disaster for everybody. But I mean, there's plenty of ways to do it. If Michael Heiss really is focused on local elections, and I take your word for it that he is, if you've spoken to him, I trust it. You're a good judge of character and all that. I don't know him personally, and you know, I think that, you know, that would be the best way for it. And you know, I wish them well. I hope we can work together on, you know, installing the anti-tax in, you know, a whole bunch of places alongside them. I would really like to work with the LPMC. I'm going a different way because I haven't sensed that from them. And, you know, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go do this a different way. And I'm going to use the anti-tax as one of the billy clubs I'm going to beat the state over the head with. Not truly beat them over it, but, you know, get them into it.
Nicholas, I'm not God, but I see and know everything.
Just for my own personal, this is not commentary on anything you guys are talking about at all, just my own personal bent. I would see getting involved with like doing political action with the LP as, even if everything else was phenomenal, just the fact that in doing it you would have to do things like interact with, you know, Archie Flower and exactly. Yeah. The fact that you would have to interact with these goofballs and that you have to take them into consideration, that you just like, they become a part of your day just because you're deciding to be involved with the LP. That for me is sufficient. Like that's enough to turn me off from it. I'm like, anybody else can take over the LP. They can do that. It's not my thing.
Physical removal is a thing.
Yeah.
Fully support that.
Well, guys, we're coming up on like almost 2 hours. Do you guys have plugs?
Freeman Me on the Wall podcast, By Any Means Necessary Substack. And if you haven't, or if you already have, go watch it for a second time. Go watch Monopoly on Violence on Amazon Prime.
I'm on Twitter at Real King Pilled. YouTube, our show there is called King Pilled. And you can also, the other thing I would say is to come join the Nomad Network. It's a network that Jason Stapleton built that I've helped him with and done a lot of work with, and it's a really, really good place. It's for people who are liberty minded, who want to create their own liberty. They're interested in controlling the source of their income and improving their own rare and specialized skills, and also being connected with a community of people who are like minded. So it's if you want to join that, just go to my.nomadnetwork.app and you can join.
I double that. Go join the Nomad Network.
And if you can, like and subscribe. You know, I'm trying to get monetized here. So if 32 people in the chat, 26 have put some likes down. If you haven't, please subscribe. This helps my channel, helps me get monetized, helps me fight a war on poverty and stop being poor. And and again, I'm at Popular Liberty _ on Twitter. And I now have a subscribe star available at Subscribestar / popular-liberty. And stop, like right there, Steve, stop letting Andrew be poor. I don't, got to make sure that I can quit my job at the biodiesel plant where I'm stuffing all the poor people into the vats. The other poor people. So thank you. And again, also want to plug the last libertarian roundtable from the Matt, Pete, and Poppy that we did, that was discussing a little more in detail the HOPA's What Must Be Done strategy. That was on Pete's channel, and definitely put that up. I think next time around we're going to be on the King Build channel. All right, take care, y'all.
Take care. Thanks.